What's going on, backyarders? Thank you for joining me for another brew day. Today I'm going to brew a beer that is one of my favorites for summertime. I remember a long time ago, and in my area, maybe it was different for your area, but Kugel's came out with the summer shandy. And it became, just the next best thing in beer. It's been a while now, but it's still a great style beer, especially in the summertime. And in our area, or at least amongst my friends, it's starting to make a little bit of a comeback. We drank it so much there when it first started coming out that we just kind of, played it out a little bit. But now it's starting to come back, and I can't wait to brew this lemon shandy beer from Northern Brewer. Northern Brewer has a great instruction sheet, and it just makes it real easy to follow through. This is an all-grain beer. That's pretty much all I do nowadays, and it's pretty simple. So it's going to take 5 to 6 weeks total, including brewing and fermenting and conditioning, and that should put me right on schedule for some really nice weather. So let's go ahead and get started. For me, the first step to brewing beer at home is your water chemistry. And, don't get scared by those, chemistry word. I know for me, especially when I was younger, I hated chemistry or anything to do with chemistry, but it's essential to brewing great beer. And it's not that hard. Once you get the hard work out of the way, which is figuring out what's in your brewing water. If you're using the tap, you need to get a test done by a local lab, or sometimes your water supplier will supply you with a test, but it's got to be an elaborate test. We're testing for things like calcium, magnesium, and sometimes some of these elements just don't come up on a basic water test. So once you get that test, then you use a tool like I use on Brewer's Friend. You just plug and play. So with this beer, we're looking for a balanced profile, and there's a drop-down menu that you can choose right in Brewer's Friend as far as what kind of target profile you're looking for. So then you just go down to the salts and you start plugging and playing until you get the green row on the bottom there that tells you you're within range for a good brew. Let me show you real quick what I'm talking about. So I started at the top up here with 5 gallons. That's how much beer I'm brewing. I went with this balanced profile. So here I enter my source minerals on this top line, and that comes from my lab sheet that I got from the lab about 2 years ago. I get it done about every 2 years just to update it, and I just plug these numbers in directly off the lab sheet. My target minerals are filled in automatically by picking this balanced profile dropdown. And so down here, I need to see this row basically all in green. And the way that I can get it into green is by plugging and playing these numbers right here of these different salts. So if I take, 1.5 and drop it to 1.0. Now watch this bottom line right here, specifically over here. You see how it changed the number? Still in green, but it's getting a little further away from neutral at 0. So back to 1.5, and you can see that it adjusts them. And so you just plug and play these until you get a green row, and then you're good to go. Down here, it will tell you, how you're looking as far as a balanced brew. Green stars means you're within brewing range. And of course, if you have any of these, you need to pay attention to make adjustments. And then some other notes about the water chemistry down here. So really nice tool on brewersfriend.com. Let's go ahead and get these salts done, and we'll dump them into the mash tun. How much water for the mash? Northern Brewer's sheet gives you a real simple equation. You take the total grain, multiply it times 1.5 quarts, and then that'll equal 14.25. Convert that to gallons. And so I'm looking for 3.56 gallons to mash in with. So we're going to go ahead and go over to the mash tun. I've already got that water into the mash tun, heat it up. We're going to check the temperature and get our salts into the water. So my thermometer on the front says 165. I want this mash to be 152. I always like to double check the water temperature with a thermopen just to be 100% sure what I'm working with. 166, so it's pretty close. So what we need to do is go ahead and put the salts in, and we're going to go ahead and dump the grains in. And the reason I'm looking for that 165, 166 is I'm going to lose 12 to 14 degrees when I'm putting the grains in by just having the top out and stirring it all together. So I want to make sure I'm a little higher, 12 to 14 degrees higher than my targeted mash temperature. All right, let's dump these salts in. We're going to do this kind of quick because I don't want to lose much of the temperature. Salts are in. Those that came from that You know that Brewer's Friend sheet we just were working with? A little stir. Time to get these grains in. Nice and slow. If not, it'll turn into little gummy dough balls that are a pain in the butt to break up. So I want to go nice and slow. And get it nice and stirred up. Make sure we don't have any dough balls. Looks like we're good. And we're gonna let that mash. We're at 156. I'm gonna leave the lid off for 155. You wanna be within about 2 to 3 degrees. So I'm gonna leave the lid off until I get to about 154. Okay, 5 minutes in, we got that temperature pretty good. Lid is on and timer set for about 55 more minutes. We wanna mash for about an hour. Here's what our grain consisted of. I like how Northern Brewer ships all your grains right in the same bag. Then you can just dump it in a bucket like I did, and it makes it real smooth and real nice. So if you haven't seen one of my brew videos before, my brewing setup starts with my SS BrewTech 10-gallon, and this is my HLT. So I use this to warm all my water up, and right now I started with about 10 gallons total. And I try to keep that at about 170, 180 or so during the mash process. That way, if I need additional hot water to get the temperature of the mash up, I can easily do so. And I transferred, it has markings right on the back, so I know exactly how much to transfer. I use the Blickman boil kettle, and it's decent. The thing I don't like about it is this water gauge here to tell you how much water is in the boil kettle. You got to take it apart, and it's funky, and it just takes a lot of time. It's not the most efficient equipment that I have. Probably upgrade that in the future, but it costs quite a bit of money, so I'm going to get my money's worth out of it. And then on the mash tun is the SS BrewTech 10-gallon mash tun. Love this thing. Well insulated, holds temperature like you would not believe. And then I have a brew pump to help transfer everything. 20 minutes left in the mash, so now what I want to do is go ahead and start recirculating. I have a hose hooked up to the outlet side, or the outlet of the mash tun goes into the inlet of my pump, and then my outlet pipe goes back around to the side up at the top of the mash tun to start. It's the sparge device that I use, and I recirculate that way. So to start recirculating, I open the valve up on the mash tun all the way, let that hose fill up. And then I open the outlet valve on the pump, just a crack. I want this to go nice and slow. If you go too fast, you're not going to get optimal sugar. You're not going to pull as much out of the grain. So nice and slow, just want to start kind of circulating that and making sure we're getting as many sugars extracted from the grains as possible. Now, the reason that I wait until about 15 to 20 minutes left in the mash to start recirculating is because the temperature is going to drop as I start recirculating. It's just, it's having to travel through the hoses and it's moving. So that 153, 154 that I've been sitting at is probably going to drop 2 or 3 degrees. So I don't want to do that in the beginning, because if I do, I'm going to be under that optimal mash temperature of 152. It's at this point now that I'm checking my HLT and making sure my sparge water is about 162 degrees, because about transfer, you're going to lose somewhere around 10 degrees. So I want to sparge with 152 degree water. So heating that up and getting it ready. Okay, so the mash is over. We've been mashing for 60 minutes, recirculated the last 20 minutes. Now it's time to, actually I already did it, change the hoses up so that we're going to still feed into the pump, to the end of the pump from the bottom of the mash tun. But now the outlet side of the pump is going to go to the boil kettle. So we're going to slowly just, kind of transfer this over to the boil kettle, because we don't want a stuck mash. A stuck mash is when you're trying to draw the the wort through there too fast, and it gets clogged up, and it's a pain in the neck. So you don't want to stuck mash. So do it nice and slowly. Have patience with it. I know some of you guys are only subscribers of Delmarva Backyard for the food, or maybe just for the beer. And, I try to do as much of them as I can. I know probably most of the subscribers are for the food, the barbecue, and that's great. But I just want you to understand, if you haven't tried home brewing and you have even a little bit of interest, it's a lot like barbecue or cooking. It's putting your twist on things. It's following recipes. It's, getting things exact so they taste the best that they can. And there's just a lot of similarities between them. So, I don't know. If you're still watching this and you're just here for the barbecue, I would suggest maybe, getting into an entry-level kit and seeing what you think. Entry-level kits don't cost that much. So you can get in, try it. I will warn you, it's a little intensive the day of the brew. After that, man, it's really awesome. It can be defeating if you don't do it right, but it really doesn't happen that often as long as you're careful about the details. And guys, if you're interested in my equipment, please check the description below. I'll have it all listed out. You can click on the links and get more information and even purchase it if you'd like. Another way, if you want to support Delmarva Backyard, is to go to Patreon, and I'll have a link in the video description below for that. I appreciate everybody. And, rather it's your view, it's your financial support. It all means a lot to me. Just, being a part of the backyard experience, and it means a lot. So thank you. Okay, it looks like we got 2 3/4 gallons of wort out of that mash. So if you remember, we put a little over 3.5 into the mash. And so that gives you an idea how much, water's still left into the grains. So now it calls for 4 3/4 gallons to sparge with. So we're going to very carefully go from the mash tun, or the HLT, the hot liquor tank, where the hot water is at about 170 degrees. We're going to transfer that into the pump with this hose, and then out of the pump into the sparge arm on the SS Brewtech mash tun. We're going to fill it up with about 5 gallons of hot water, and we'll start our sparge. I always control my flow with my outlet valve on my pump. It's easier on the pump that way. And now we'll turn the pump on. And we're going to give those grains a little stir. Get them all mixed up. Okay, so a little tip here is to go ahead and get your cleaning water ready. So you got to get that up to a nice warm temperature to mix it. So I put about 5.5 gallons in there. I'm going to bring that up to about 120 degrees and mix my cleaner in there, and it'll be all ready for when I need to start cleaning things. And I can kind of clean as I go. Okay, so 60 minutes of sparging has went by, and I recirculated for the last 20 minutes, just like I did with the mash. And, hopefully I'm going to get a good efficiency here. Temperatures dropped a little bit lower than I wanted to, about 145 or so. But it wasn't enough that I wanted, and it was towards the end. It wasn't enough that I really wanted to go ahead and run some more hot water and get it in there. So I thought it would be fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and transfer over to the boil kettle. And so we're looking for about 6 gallons, maybe a little bit over 6 gallons, because I'm going to burn off a good gallon during the boil. And I'm trying to keg, around 5, maybe a little under 5 gallons. Okay, so we collected just over 6 gallons and went ahead and started the Blickman Boilermaker. And we're going to bring this up to a boil. We're going to take it up to about 200 as quickly as I can get it there. And then I'm going to back off the heat. I like to go from 200 to a rolling boil very slowly so it doesn't boil over. Okay, so we're over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. It's time to back off on the heat a little bit so that we don't spill over. You just want to be very careful as you approach whatever it is boiling, whatever boiling temperature you have in your area, depending on your height above sea level. It's going to change a little bit, but 210, 212 here, and I'm at about 206 now, so I'm going to ease into this boil. And when you're brewing beer, you really need to have a nice rolling boil for most of the boil time. We're gonna have one hop addition for the 60-minute boil. There's our crystal. Now, after you're past the original break here, where you get up to a boil, that's when you want to add your hops, because you can get another chance for a boil over when you add your hops. It's called the hop break. You got to be careful of that. It'll spill over quick. Nice and slow. See how it's breaking like that? A little more. There we go. That's 1 ounce of 1 ounce of crystal. All right, there we go. We're going to boil for 60 minutes. I'm going to gradually increase this to a really good boil. 10 minutes left in the boil, guys. I'm going to go ahead and put my wort chiller in, let it sterilize, sanitize, or whatever. Now I'm going to add, this is 2 lemons, and all I did was just kind of go around the outside of the lemon, scrape it off, so I got, you know, all the peel, because that's where a lot of the aroma and the you know, wonderful part of the lemon is going to come from as far as brewing beer. So we're going to dump that in to give us a nice lemon characteristic. The recipe calls for lemon crystal, which is a sweet lemon flavor after fermentation. You wouldn't want to add that before fermentation. And off recipe a little bit more, I got some Galaxy pellet hops, 1 ounce. It's a fruity hop, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now at what we call flame out. And then we're going to stir this together. Use my wort chiller and just kind of stir this up. I'm just going to keep doing this, whirlpool this around, bring it down in temperature for, it's probably going to take 20 minutes or so. And I'm going to get it down to about 75 degrees and we'll go ahead and pitch the yeast. We're going to get some air into the wort, so that's why I'm kind of swirling it around. I want as much air in there as I can get. I'm also going to blow a little CO2 in there, and that's going to help, you know, bring our oxygen levels up. It's going to give that yeast a good chance to get a good start. We got just under 5 gallons. Now this is a yeast starter that I made. It's with 4 cups of water, ½ cup of dry malt extract, and then a package of I'll have to come back to you on the name of the yeast. I'm just going to dump this all in here. Put it on. Let's get her strapped down. And our airlock. I have my controller set to 66. The ideal temperature for fermentation for this beer, per the recipe, is anywhere from 65 to 70. I like to be on the lower ends of those temperatures. So 66, it does have a 2-degree interval, so it can get up to 68 and then down to 64. You can see I have a little heater. This probe is going to go into the side of the fermenter, and this is just a second reference to know what the temperature is inside. The reason we put the probe in here is because when the beer ferments, it's much warmer than the air around it. So we want to base the temperature off of the actual temperature of the beer. Let's get our starting gravity. A little spin so there's no bubbles. Like 1.060.